UFC 252 Miocic versus Cormier takes place this weekend, and I can't wait for this card. I'm going to be going through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown to every single fight on the card, starting with, and let's not waste any more time, our early prelim opener. And what an amazing early prelim opener it is, kicking off the pay-per-view card of UFC 252. It is Chris Dalcha versus Parker Porter, two fat white men that shouldn't be in the UFC. That's how we're kicking off the pay-per-view. Absolute disgrace. Shouldn't be in the UFC, either single one of them. But we're going to be going with Parker Porter. He's got more experience. The UFC schedule doesn't even know his record. It says he's 6-4. He's actually 10-5. He's got a lot of experience. He's fought guys like Gabriel Gonzaga outside the UFC. Lost to him very brutally, but that's okay. It's Gabriel Gonzaga. Chris Dalcha lost to worse opponents, hasn't fought the same level of competition as Parker Porter. I'm going to be going with Parker Porter getting the job done against Chris Dalcha. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. They're both absolute fat messes of slobs, and I disagree with either of them being on the card. However, I am going to be going with Parker Porter. He's got more experience. And I just think that's going to be a good factor to have on a short notice heavyweight bout if you're more used to being in the cage than your opponent is. Parker Porter gets the job done. There's really no skill to break down in either of them. Parker Porter gets it done. Moving on up the card. TJ Brown versus Danny Chavez. Danny Chavez. This is another one of those fights. Probably shouldn't be on the card. TJ Brown was in the UFC, lost his debut to Jordan Griffin. No hard feelings. Jordan Griffin's a dangerous opponent. Not to mention that TJ Brown was beating Jordan Griffin before that finish came in the second round by Jordan Griffin. TJ Brown, TJ Downtown Brown, dangerous grappler. Danny Chavez, explosive knockout striker in the first round. Past his prime right now at 33 years of age. I guess this is his last attempt at making a run in the UFC. I am going to be going with TJ Brown. Trains with Bryce Mitchell. Great grappling. He goes out there and takes advantage of a Danny Chavez. Listen, when you're taking a fight on short notice and you're already a guy that just is an explosive guy in the first round that gets a lot of quick finishes, I think Danny Chavez is going to go out there looking for a quick finish. What do grapplers do when guys get overzealous and come forward and try and throw big haymakers? They go right underneath and they double leg them. TJ Downtown Brown is going to take Danny Chavez downtown. And by downtown, I mean the canvas. TJ Brown's going to get it done. Moving on, great grappler TJ Brown to the prelims. Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. Daniel Pineda used to be at PFL not too long ago, has fought in the UFC before, and has fought guys like Mike Brown, Diego Brandao. You might recognize some of those names. Mike Brown is basically the head trainer at ATT right now. Daniel Pineda, very dangerous, hasn't been in the UFC for a very long time, was at PFL. However, at the UFC, we have USADA. Daniel Pineda is coming off of failed drug tests at PFL, where both of his wins in the PFL have now been overturned to no contests. I'm not going to be picking Daniel Pineda. I am going to be picking Herbert Burns. Daniel Pineda is a veteran, and sometimes that can be handy when you're taking on a jiu-jitsu guy because veterans have been in those positions before. They don't panic. They don't give up certain chokes that wouldn't be there otherwise because they're nice and comfortable. Daniel Pineda is a veteran. I give him the credit he deserves. He's a cheater, though. And he's not very good anyway, and he's way past his prime. I'm going with Herbert Burns. I think he gets it done by submission in the first round. Listen, Herbert Burns is one of these guys. Jiu-jitsu guy coming in. Everyone knows how good of his jiu-jitsu is. It's absolutely amazing. His surname is Burns, which kind of means you're good at jiu-jitsu anyway. Like, you don't even have to train whatsoever. If your surname is Burns, Gilbert Burns just gives that down to you genetically. Somehow you're just a great wizard in the jiu-jitsu world. Herbert Burns, great grappling. Really good grappling. But one thing that told me all I needed to know about Herbert Burns was when he KO'd Nate Landwehr in the first round with a knee up the middle. I predicted it to happen. I said Herbert Burns was going to go out there and beat Nate Landwehr because I liked Nate Landwehr, but he gets a little bit overexcited sometimes. That's what happened. Herbert Burns got it done in the first round, and Nate Landwehr is a guy who I have a lot of respect for. Just beat Darren Elkins. Check the stats if you disagree with the decision. Just beat Darren Elkins. It was a close fight, though, don't get me wrong. Herbert Burns, great opponent. And Nate Landwehr is a guy who at M1 was running through murderer's row of M1. All of these dangerous Russian guys, Ankalaevs, Magomeds, all of them were trying to take down Nate Landwehr and trying to finish him, and they couldn't do it, but Herbert Burns could with a knee up the middle in the first round. That tells me all I need to know about Herbert Burns. He's going to go out there and beat Daniel Pineda. In my opinion, the surest win on the card. Herbert Burns gets it done. Moving on to the other prelim fight. Felice Herrig. This card stinks. This card stinks of shit. This card is so bad. The main card is great. And we're going to get to that in a second, but Jesus. This card reeks. This is a terrible card on the prelims. Felice Herrig versus Vera Jandiroba. Vera Jandiroba, 15-1. Don't let the record fool you. She's fought a bunch of cans, not to mention the women that she's fought in her career that have been 10-0 are now 10-4. You know, and they fought a complete bunch of cans. Like the woman that she fought in her career that was 10-0 had all of her opponents making their debut because she looks somewhat attractive. That seems to be what happens. But Vera Jandiroba, great opponent, lost her last fight. I'm not really too high on Vera Jandiroba right now. Neither am I with Felice Herrig. Felice Herrig is less than good. She might be less than bad, honestly. Felice Herrig is not a good fighter, but she's a bigger girl. She's more athletic. She had a fight as well booked against Yan Xiaonan back in June. So I like it, because now I know that she's at least had somewhat of a training camp put together, and she knows that she's going to be fighting in this current situation. So she's ready to go. She's an athlete. She's got decent... Nothing about her game in terms of fighting is good. She's trained her whole life, and her jab is... It makes me feel sick. It makes me feel sick watching them fight. But I think that Felice Herrig is going to get the job done. Vera Jandiroba's good. I just don't think she's fought good competition. Felice Herrig's fought better competition. She's the bigger girl. She's a stronger girl. She's got the reach advantage. Felice Herrig gets it done. Not to mention that Felice Herrig went to a close decision with Randa Marcos, who went to a close decision with Claudia Gadelha. Felice Herrig is not terrible as far as female fighters go. So Felice Herrig gets it done against Vera Jandiroba. Moving on up the card. Ashley Yoder. This is the co-main event of the 2020. Ashley Yoder versus Livia Renata Souza, guys. Right? Round of applause. Anyone? Anyone with me? Guys? Ashley Yoder's fighting Livia Renata Souza. Are you guys not excited about this? Ashley Yoder's going to win, even though she's got a worse record. It's the same situation with Herrig versus Jandiroba. Livia Renata Souza, good record, fought absolute bums, lost her last fight, I believe, to Brianna Van Buren, who we just watched get the fucking ass beat out of her by Tisha Torres for 3 rounds. I mean, we know what Brianna Van Buren's limit is. She beat Livia Renata Souza. Livia Renata Souza has some good wins on her record, don't get me wrong, but I am going to be going with Ashley Yoder here, a much bigger woman at the strawweight division, 5'6" compared to 5'2", 69.5-inch reach compared to a 63-inch reach. In the women's divisions and in lower divisions in general, having a 2-inch reach advantage is amazing. You give Ashley Yoder 6.5 inches. I'd love to, by the way. I'd love to give her 6.5 inches. But you give her 6.5 inches of a reach advantage in this fight. I think Ashley Yoder gets it done against Livia Renata Souza. And Felice Herrig, by the way, wins the fight against Jandiroba by boring decision. Ashley Yoder wins the fight against Livia Renata Souza by boring close decision. Moving on. Jim Miller versus Vince Pichel, headlining the prelims. Good for you, Jim Miller. I mean, this is a struggle to get through these prelims, but Jim Miller is an amazing fight versus Vince Pichel. Very underrated Vince Pichel. Vince from Hell Pichel. I like his nickname. I'm not going to pick him to win purely based on his nickname. I'm going to pick the veteran status of Jim Miller. I think on a short notice turnaround, I'm going to pick the guy in Jim Miller who's been more active recently, because then I can kind of guarantee that he's ready to fight, because Vince Pichel, although he's a good fighter and has beat some good opponents, including they have the same last win, Roosevelt Roberts. Vince Pichel beat him all the way back last year. I believe he's been out for 1 year and 2 months now. I think he fought in June of last year, if I remember correctly, on a Russia card. Vince Pichel, great fighter, hasn't fought the best level of competition in the UFC like Jim Miller has. I think Jim Miller gets it done, not to mention Jim Miller destroyed Roosevelt Roberts by armbar in the first round. Vince Pichel took him to a unanimous decision. But still, Jim Miller, I believe, is going to get it done against Vince Pichel, getting himself the submission win after knocking down Vince Pichel, or maybe a close decision. I have no idea how Jim Miller is going to win his fights, because it seems like it's going to be a different thing every single time. I would imagine Jim Miller wins the fight by submission in the first round. Jim Miller gets it done. Veteran, fought more recently, tells me he's in shape. And Vince Pichel is one of these guys that I don't think cares about being world champion, because you can't care about being world champion if you're fighting once a year and you're already past your prime. You would be in a rush if you wanted to be world champion at this point. I think Vince Pichel's a great fighter. I think he's showing up for a paycheck like a lot of the people on these cards recently have done. Jim Miller's going to get the job done against Vince Pichel. And if he wins that one, listen, Jim Miller, if he wins this next fight, might get a ranked opponent. You never know, because Jim Miller's put together some good wins against good opponents, and if he beats Vince Pichel, that's another great win. Jim Miller gets it done. Moving on to the main card of the evening, Magomed Ankalaev versus Ion Cutelaba. Oh my, this is a great main card. I like the main card. The rest of the card is absolute trash, and it makes me feel sick. But Ankalaev versus Cutelaba is a good one. I'm picking Ion Cutelaba. I'm picking Ion Cutelaba because I'll tell you what I've done recently. And a lot of these main card picks may be unpopular. There's going to be a lot of unpopular main card predictions here. I've watched some fights recently, guys. I've watched some fights of these people. Magomed Ankalaev has had some close ones. Not close ones, but he's had some fights that weren't as dominant as we have been told they were. 13-1, had a long amateur record, fought great guys back home as well. I know he's had some guys making their debut, but Ion Cutelaba fought a bunch of cans in the first place as well. Magomed Ankalaev took on some good guys earlier on in his career. I respect that. I watched his Paul Craig fight again. And I know Paul Craig is the Dagestani hunter. El Cliffy, we like to call him over here. Paul Craig is a dangerous man, and against any Dagestani, he triangles him. 100%. Or Chechnyan. I don't even know what Magomed Ankalaev is, but he's one of the guys that ends with an Orvanev or something like that. But still, Ankalaev is a dangerous opponent. I just think that a lot of his fights have been quite close. His fight with Paul Craig wasn't one-sided domination. Paul Craig got some good takedowns in there, landed some good shots on the feet as well. And if you're not KOing Paul Craig at this point in your career, Paul Craig is there to be KO'd. He's there to be KO'd. Although on the ground he's very dangerous. I don't think that Ankalaev is going to get it done against Ion Cutelaba, because I don't see Ankalaev finishing Ion Cutelaba. If Ankalaev does win, I think he'll win by unanimous decision from Ion Cutelaba just gassing out in the third round like he normally does. But Ion Cutelaba, his body has changed recently. He's not gotten fat, but he's less completely shredded. He's more smooth, which tells me that he might have been doing a little bit more cardio recently. Or or he's just completely out of shape. I really don't believe that he's going to be out of shape, because he's known that he's had a fight for a long time. I think Cutelaba gets it done in the first round by TKO. I'm doing my original prediction. I watched that fight again. I think Ion Cutelaba is going to catch him in the first round by TKO. I think when everything is a weird environment, Cutelaba is the savage that will prevail. And he's got a wicked sick grappling game as well that people choose to sleep on. I have no idea why. He's a savage. Ion Cutelaba gets it done against Magomed Ankalaev by first round TKO. Come and get me in the comments. Come and get me. I think Cutelaba wins by first round TKO against Magomed Ankalaev, getting the job done. Moving on up the card, John Dodson versus Merab Dvalishvili. Oh my god, what a great fight. Merab Dvalishvili's going to lose, in my opinion, but he's a dangerous guy. Really, really dangerous guy. But I'll tell you this, Merab Dvalishvili set a record for takedowns and he broke his own personal best. In the bantamweight division, I believe, he's got so many takedowns. A lot of people look at that and tell themselves that having a whole bunch of takedowns in a single fight means a great deal. You know what that tells me? If Merab Dvalishvili broke his personal record on takedowns, then Gustavo Lopez broke the personal record of getting back up from takedowns. Right? Like, I watched Merab Dvalishvili versus Gustavo Lopez. I think Merab should have completely annihilated him in the first round. This is a guy in Gustavo Lopez who does not belong in the UFC. 11-5, terrible fighter. Like, he's not good. Short notice as well for him taking on this opponent in Merab Dvalishvili. I feel as though Gustavo Lopez is not good and looked okay against Merab Dvalishvili, even though he got dominated every single round. All I'm looking for here is, did he get back up from the takedowns? I think that John Dodson can get back up from the takedowns, and I think when John Dodson gets back up from the takedowns, he can KO Merab Dvalishvili, because one thing I've noticed, As the rounds go on, Merab does get a little bit more tired. That just seems to... I'm not saying he has a cardio problem, but when you put a pace like that on in the grappling department in the first few rounds, you're going to get a little bit more tired in the later rounds having to take a guy down 14 times. But still, Merab throws very risky shots in the second and third round on the feet. I don't like his stand-up whatsoever. And if John Dodson can find the perfect punch to beat the technical Nathaniel Wood in the third round, I think that John Dodson can survive Merab Dvalishvili for 2 rounds, because Merab, whatever you say about him, he's had some close fights. He's had some losses. I mean, even though it was a split decision that I thought could have gone to him against Frankie Sains, he still lost to Frankie Sains. You know? I like Merab Dvalishvili. I really do. I just think that John Dodson's going to crack him in the third round, because his stand-up is just a little bit risky in the third round once he's gassed out his arms a little bit. John Dodson gets it done. He wouldn't take this fight unless he knew he was going to win. John Dodson should be looking up the rankings. He sees something in Merab's game that means that he's going to win this fight. On a main card of a pay-per-view, John Dodson gets it done against Merab Dvalishvili. And if you look at John Dodson's career, look at the losses. Jimmy Rivera, Piotr Yan, Demetrius Johnson twice, John Lineker. These aren't bad losses. I can excuse these losses. He's going to beat Merab Dvalishvili by KO in the third or second round. Moving on up the card, Junior Dos Santos versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I like Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Probably another unpopular opinion here. I think Junior Dos Santos goes out there, double legs him and smashes him on the ground. Straight away. Straight away. There's no way Junior Dos Santos is going to go out there and try and strike with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He could do. And here's where one thing I like about Junior Dos Santos is striking in a matchup with Jairzinho Rozenstruik is that Junior Dos Santos is a striker that doesn't rush forward. A lot of guys that rush forward, like Alan Crowder, who got KO'd by Jairzinho Rozenstruik, like Andrei Arlovski, who got KO'd by Jairzinho Rozenstruik, all rushing forward. JDS did that against Ngannou, but usually JDS is on his back foot. He's looking for openings. He's very technical. He doesn't rush too much. I like that style against Jairzinho Rozenstruik on the feet, which tells me that JDS is not going to be rushing in straight away against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He's the much bigger guy, because as much as Google likes to tell us that Jairzinho Rozenstruik is 6'4", he's about 5'11". He's not a big guy for the division whatsoever, and he's kind of fat as well. I think that JDS is going to go out there, earn a little bit of respect with the hands, and then immediately blast double leg Jairzinho Rozenstruik and get the job done. And listen to me. We're at a time right now in the UFC world where when fighters go away, they almost always come back in worse shape. Whenever we see a fighter show up to a fight nowadays that's an older fighter that's on the other end of their career, they don't seem to be in the same level of shape. For JDS to go away during this whole situation in the world and come back looking like a Greek god, the best shape we've ever seen JDS in for a long time, he goes away and gets in better shape because of the whole lockdown situation. I say JDS wins this fight. Double legs him, trains at a good gym, double legs Jairzinho Rozenstruik. There's no way JDS's coaches are telling him to go out there and strike with Jairzinho, sorry. I think he's going to go out there, double leg him, expose him on the ground, because I'll tell you this, I watched that Junior Albini fight again. They put it on YouTube. As much as Jairzinho Rozenstruik caught him in the second round with a head kick, Junior Albini took him down and was on top in that fight. If JDS watches that, he's 100% going to go for the grappling. Alistair Overeem dominated Jairzinho Rozenstruik for all 5 rounds. Not all 5 rounds. Lost one of those rounds, I believe. But still, dominated him in the grappling department. Just stayed on top of him. If Overeem can do that, JDS can do it too, in my opinion. I think JDS goes out there, double legs him, and rains down a flurry in the first round for a first round TKO. Jairzinho coming off a KO loss very recently as well, only in May. Hold on a second. UFC 249. It was on the... He hasn't even given it 3 months. He's going to get KO'd. Jairzinho Rozenstruik's going to get KO'd brutally. Are you dumb? Jairzinho Rozenstruik, are you dumb? You just got KO'd and sent to the Shadow Realm from Francis Ngannou. At least get out of the Shadow Realm first. You're still in it. Jairzinho Rozenstruik is still in the Shadow Realm. And he's coming back 3 months later against Junior Dos Santos. Less than 3 months later. He's going to lose. Junior Dos Santos is going to get the KO win. Moving on up the card, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. I like it. I really do like Sean O'Malley. I think he's going to win against Marlon Vera as well, because I'll tell you this. Marlon Vera, for a while ago, I believe this was last year, was my dark horse of the bantamweight division. I don't think he is anymore. I watched a lot of his fights again, guys, and I've watched a lot of Marlon Vera's highlights and a lot of his finishes. I've watched some of his fights again just to re-jog my memory, because a little bit of the situation in the MMA world right now is people seem to be judging fights by the finish of the fight. You can't do that. You've got to watch the whole thing. Sean O'Malley's made easy work of Eddie Wineland and Jose Alberto Quinones, who, as much as people might say are bums, they're still quite good and ranked top 25, top 30 in the bantamweight division for a reason. I mean, Jose Alberto Quinones, I believe, is 7-2 or 6-2 in the UFC, maybe 5-2. Still somewhat of a respectable record. Marlon Vera, watched some of his fights. He loses a lot of them. He loses a lot of his fights before he wins. He really does. And I know he's had some dominant victories here and there, but Andre Ewell beat Marlon Vera in that first round, arguably outstruck him. Marlon Vera lost the first round against Andre Ewell. It was a bit of a toss-up. It was a close round, but still, that happened. Then in the Song Yadong fight, although I thought he won that fight quite clearly, they gave it to Song Yadong because he was up on numbers here and there. I thought that Marlon Vera did enough where there was some close numbers in those rounds, just because he was the more dominant guy. He was landing the bigger shots. His shots had way more of effect on Song Yadong than Song Yadong's shots had on Marlon Vera. He's got a great chin. One thing he does is he brings his guard up real high, right next to his head, elbows high. Sean O'Malley's going to find a front kick underneath that all day long. If Marlon Vera kicks with Sean O'Malley in the first round, he might have a good chance. I just feel as though he's going to get KO'd. I really do, because I've watched Marlon Vera's fights again. He was losing to Nohelin Hernandez. Nohelin Hernandez took a fight on short notice, then went on and fought Jack Shaw and got dominated start to finish and didn't even land more than 2 strikes against Jack Shaw. He was beating Marlon Vera in the first round before the second round submission happened. And he took that fight on short notice, so you could argue that he gassed out because he took it on short notice. Before that, Marlon Vera destroyed Frankie Saenz. Great win. Before that, Guido Canetti was beating Marlon Vera in the first round. Wuji Buren was beating Marlon Vera in the first round. 9-6, 8-6. These guys aren't good, but Marlon Vera is amazing. I'm not saying that Marlon Vera is bad. I really am not. He's amazing. After the first round, I don't think you can afford to be losing against Sean O'Malley because he's got too much power in the bantamweight division. He's got too much confidence, and if you're losing to Sean O'Malley, you're probably going to get KO'd at this point. I don't think that Marlon Vera can afford to be losing, can afford to let Sean O'Malley outstrike him, and that's what's going to happen in the first round, because Sean O'Malley, in my opinion, would destroy Guido Canetti, would destroy Wuji Buren, would destroy all of these other guys, would probably destroy Andre Ewell as well, but that'd actually be quite a fun matchup because Andre Ewell's a long and rangy guy, but still, would destroy Nohelin Hernandez. I think Marlon Vera would have a scrap back and forth with Eddie Wineland for 1.5 rounds before eventually taking over and getting a win. It's not that I'm saying that Marlon Vera is worse than O'Malley. He might beat guys that O'Malley can't beat, and O'Malley will beat guys that Vera can't beat. Style-wise, Vera loses the majority of all of his fights first rounds. He loses the majority of the first rounds of all of his fights. You can't lose rounds against O'Malley because he's going to catch you too many times. He's going to crack Marlon Vera straight down the pipe. I'm going to do a full breakdown for this as well. I think Marlon Vera loses to Sean O'Malley. It's a bad matchup for him. Sean O'Malley gets the job done, improving to 13-0. Moving on, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, the trilogy. Oh dear God, this card is good. The main card is good. The prelims, we got through it. I almost threw up multiple times. We've kept it in. But this main card is raunchy. I think Stipe Miocic is going to win. I think Stipe Miocic goes out there, TKOs Daniel Cormier in the third round, because I've heard a lot of people saying that, Stipe only won because he made an adjustment. Well, guess what? The adjustment's been made. A lot of people talking about that. Dude, DC was whooping up on Stipe for the first 3 rounds. And then in the 4th round, Stipe made the adjustment and turned it around. DC's going to win this time. Don't think that's the case. I think Stipe's made the adjustment, so he knows about the adjustment moving into this next fight, and he's going to pick it up straight away. right away with the body shots while DC's trying to reach for his hands, which opens up the body, and while DC's throwing a bunch of straight shots, which opens up the body as well, and while DC is looking for the eye poke. I don't think DC's going to get away with eye pokes in this fight, like he did in the second fight, like he did in the first one as well. Deliberate, constant eye pokes, and if he wasn't landing the eye pokes, he was going for them anyway, which is always a problem, makes the fighters skittish. I think Stipe Miocic is going to go out there. DC's not going to get away with the eye pokes this time, and if he does, it's an absolute disgrace to the UFC how much they favoritize DC. I like DC. I actually somewhat want him to win because it would be a very, it would be a sad ending to DC's career to see him lose to Stipe Miocic again. But I think the Miocic gets him out of there in the third round. Earlier this time. Starts with the body shots in the second instead of the fourth. Instead of the end of the third as well. Gets it done. Speeds things up. Gets the finish in the third round. The one thing I worry about is Stipe Miocic is looking comfortable with his life. He's grown his hair out. He's got glasses on. I worry about what kind of Stipe we're going to see. But then it tells me in the back of my brain, there's no way that Stipe Miocic would take this fight if he wasn't ready, because this is his entire legacy on the line. He's ready. So is DC. I don't think we can question either of their training camps here in terms of how dedicated are they. This is the biggest fight of both of their careers. Even with the John Jones situations with DC, he might go down as the best heavyweight in the UFC with a win over Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic is already the greatest heavyweight of all time in my opinion, and he cements that legacy with a win over DC and goes out on top, maybe, we'll see. I think Stipe Miocic wins in the third round by TKO. The smaller cage is going to be a problem for Stipe, but people say this again, DC's going to wrestle him this time. Well, guess what, guys? DC tried to wrestle him in the first fight, couldn't take him down, Stipe took DC down. Had great wrist control in the clinch, completely dominated DC in the clinch. Second fight, DC took Stipe down in the first round. Good job. Stipe got back up. Okay? Second fight again. Second round, DC goes for a takedown. Can't get it. Second round, Stipe goes for a takedown. Gets it against DC. DC gets back up after the takedown, shoots one of his own to get another takedown back. Stipe stuffs it with ease and ends up landing a big knee to the face of Daniel Cormier. People with arguing for DC, and I always kind of judge my prediction based on the opposition's arguments, they seem to be just lying. Like, oh, DC's going to wrestle this time. Well, I know that he wrestled the first time. Oh, well, DC's ready this time. He didn't take it seriously last time. Why would he not fucking take it seriously? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, well, DC's going to land more eye pokes this time. Fair enough. Fair enough. If DC lands more eye pokes, he's probably going to win. But I Stipe will prevail. Team Miocic. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye. What an amazing card. Well, the main card's good. The prelims are fucking... You know, like... I don't even want to bring it up because I did enjoy my dinner and I don't want to see it all over my desk. Goodbye.